be good. Anyway, so we're going to be starting off here at section, or part 2 of the book, which is, of course, entitled, "It is Right to Rebel," which is my favorite Joe Biden quote. So what a guy. What a guy. I don't think he actually said that, but I did see a picture once that attributed it to him, probably as a joke, because it's a Mao quote. Anyway, so now we have some more Mao quotes. "It is necessary to trust the masses, rely on them, and respect their initiative. It is necessary to boldly arouse the masses and to let the masses rise up in revolution, educate themselves, run their own affairs, and liberate themselves," he said in 1966. Do you see why Maoists get called anarchists now? Are you starting to get the picture? Are you starting to understand? Literally an anarchist could have said that. And I mean, he was an anarchist at some point, but I mean, he wasn't by that time. But like, hello? There's some anarchists who would disagree with that, but there are a lot of anarchists who would be like, yeah, exactly, yeah. We shouldn't be like trying to control people. We should be trying to just help people so that they can, quote, educate themselves, run their own affairs, and liberate themselves, right? It's necessary to do that, he says. Anarcho-Maoism, let's go. Oh boy. Alright. And then he has another one. Talking, this one is a letter to the Red Guards of Tsinghua University Middle School. Oh boy. "While we support you, we also ask you to turn your attention to uniting with all those who can be united with. As for those who have made serious mistakes, after their mistakes have been pointed out to them, they too must be given a chance to work to correct their mistakes and to start a new life. Marx said that the proletariat must liberate not only itself, but all of mankind. If it is unable to liberate all mankind, then the proletariat too will not achieve ultimate self-liberation. I would urge you, comrades, to heed this truth." Heed this truth. I can't talk. Blech. First nose blowing of the day. Hopefully not too many more. I did try. I started a new allergy medication. See if it actually helps. I don't know. I haven't blown my nose in like the last 3 days though since I started. That's literally the first time. No, that's not true. Yesterday I had to blow my nose a bunch after I took a shower because like the steam made my nose runny. Aside from that, that doesn't count. Aside from that, I haven't had any other issues, although my nose gets a bit stuffy when I try to go to bed for some reason, but then it's not during the day usually. Like, it's relatively clear now. I don't know. Anyway, so here we go. Chapter 4 here. This is also on page 69. Nice. Of the PDF if you happen to grab this version. I would recommend getting this version, not just because it's free, but also because this is going to be different from previously published versions as far as how the names are transcribed, or transliterated rather. The names are transliterated in pinyin in this, which is much, much, much better than the previous editions of this book from other publishers that have used the Wade-Giles system. Please just get this one. It's free. Get it. It's free, and the names are in pinyin. It's better, okay? You can also buy a paperback copy of this book at cost from the publisher if you want, I believe. It's probably like $6 or something. All their books are really cheap usually. I'm not advertising, well, I am advertising for them, but I'm not paid to advertise for them. I just like them. Alright. Here we go. Chapter 4, Liu's Work Team. Right at that time, the pressure was great. We were in our dormitory, arguing intensely when we heard someone shout, "The work team is here!" Looking out the window, we saw 2 trucks full of people pull up and stop. We ran down all 4 flights of stairs. rejoicing and shouting at the top of our voices, "Mao Zedong has sent people to help us." We really welcomed them. We wept for joy. We scurried around to find rooms for them and carried in their bedrolls, and we asked them 1,000 questions, hoping to clear up all of our problems. They admitted right away that the party committee had problems. We were delighted. We thought so too. The speaker was Zhu Hongliang, a former student militant now in the party committee staff. He was describing the events of June 10th, 1966, when students welcomed the work team sent by Liu Shaoqi because the university authorities had counterattacked so fiercely. During the 10 days of unregulated upheaval that preceded this turning point, the young rebels at Tsinghua had centered their attack not on the older conservative professors, who, after all, were only carrying on as they had been trained to do, but on the party people in authority, like President Jiang Nanxiang, Party Vice Secretary Liu Bing, and Party Vice Secretary Hu Jian, who held real power in their hands and were ultimately responsible for the state of the education the students were receiving. Members of the party committee did not, of course, sit idle under this unprecedented attack. As posters exposing them appeared, they mobilized their supporters among the students and staff for rebuttal. A veritable avalanche of replies professing loyalty and denouncing counter-revolutionary records greeted each critical thrust. The political directors of the various departments called in and warned the offending rebels, as the rightists had been warned in 1957. Since the rebels were attacking a party committee, they were asked what side they stood on, the side of revolution or of counter-revolution. Party members who had joined the rebels were hauled before their departmental committees and threatened with expulsion. "Where's your party spirit? Where's your class stand?" The assumption behind these arguments and threats was that the Communist Party was a monolith equally revolutionary at all levels, and that an attack on any party committee or party leader represented an attack on Mao Zedong. Since this assumption had been widely accepted for many years, the arguments were convincing to many. Even if they didn't understand the issues, most people at least had faith in the party, and it therefore made sense to rally behind its local representatives. Others, not nearly so sanguine about the revolutionary nature of the university leaders, were still intimidated by their threats and so fell in line. But the bolder rebels remained uncowed. They continued to press the attack, and day by day won more adherents, in part because their arguments were convincing, and in part because the student masses resented the arrogance and the repressive tactics of the school authorities. Then, on June 10th, as activity on the campus mounted to a fever pitch, the cadres of a work team began to arrive from the city. The rebels, thinking that the work team had come to support them, were overjoyed, as Zhu so vividly described. By June 13th, the full team was on hand, 500 cadres sent by the Beijing Party Central Committee with the concurrence of the Central Committee, where Liu Shaoqi was temporarily in command since Mao Zedong had left for a trip to the south. Don't leave Liu Shaoqi in command of anything. What is wrong with these? Ostensibly, the team had come to help the students in their rebellion against the capitalist roaders. But Liu Shaoqi is literally like the top capitalist roader. That's his whole thing. Oops. But team leaders later admitted that Liu had been alarmed by the rebellion, which was spreading like wildfire through the campuses of the whole country, and had urged the team members to rush to Tsinghua like firemen going to a fire. Other teams with similar instructions were dispatched to key campuses in Beijing and elsewhere, wherever the mass movement threatened party committee control. The Tsinghua work team called a mass meeting on June 13th to introduce itself. Team leader Yulin announced a two-pronged program. On the one hand, all department and university-level cadres were suspended and ordered to report in groups for study. On the other hand, all students were called upon to return to their classrooms for a major campaign of self and mutual criticism. Yu then read out a series of regulations concerning student activity. He forbade any contact among the students of different classes, different departments, and different campuses. To ensure the latter, he ordered the campus gates locked. No one could go out or come in without special permission. He also forbade the posting of statements without prior approval from the team. Since the work team admitted that the school authorities had problems, militant rebels next day seized some of those staff members who had been most arrogant, put tall dunce caps on their heads, and paraded them through the campus to a mass meeting where they were to be repudiated. But the work team cadres, as soon as they found out what was going on, rushed to stop the proceedings. "You are like a bunch of sheep," said one. "What a low political level you have, repudiating people in this crude fashion." The students, having just studied Mao Zedong's report on an investigation of the peasant movement in Hunan, I would recommend reading that, by the way. It's actually quite good. We've read it on stream before, very long ago, years ago. Good read. Anyway, they read out the passage about peasants putting hats on landlords' heads, and Mao's comment saying, "This is fine." You know, this is a bit of a different situation, students. Okay, kids. The feudal lords being paraded around in dunce caps versus, what, some teachers that you don't like? Hey, kids, a little bit overzealous here. Maybe they need to take a trip to Sinai or something, you know? Alright. But, said the work team leader, such things are out of date. "How can you say that Mao Zedong is out of date?" exclaimed the students. That happened like 40 years ago, y'all, like... Oh my god. Surrounding this brash cadre, they demanded that he make a thorough self-criticism. Until he did, they would not let him go. Kids. Really? After formal repudiation meetings were banned, the students conducted informal ones at mealtimes by asking leading cadres to stand on their chairs and listen to critical opinions while everybody except those speaking ate their rice. But this too, the work team stopped by gathering the cadres together not only for study but for sleeping and eating. When the students went looking for their targets of the day, they could not find them. No one announced where the cadres met or ate. "We couldn't accept all this," said Zhu. Like Wu Weiyu, Comrade Zhu was the first member of his family ever to receive an education. His father and mother had both made shoes all of their lives in a small shop in Hanyang, Hunan. The shoemaker's son was perhaps the liveliest of our informants, although all of them were full of energy, displaying high spirits and very keen memories. Zhu talked rapidly but clearly, laughed easily, and moved his head abruptly as his eyes darted from one listener to another. He was 25 years old, but looked much younger. His hair was clipped short above a childlike face, and his teeth were spaced wide apart in a big, expressive mouth. In sharp contrast to Wu, his build was slight and his complexion very light, but he had the same combative, forceful manner that marked so many student leaders. A frown creased his face as he continued. The working style of the work team members was very bad. They had all come in from the For Clean movement in the countryside, which is another name for the socialist education movement, for those unaware. The Four Cleans are to clean up politically, economically, organizationally, and ideologically, to substitute socialist standards for capitalist standards in both personal and community life in these four fields. Anyway, maybe peasants listened to them when he talked so arrogantly, but we weren't peasants. We were mature students who could not be treated like clods. We saw it as a problem of method. In our dormitory, we never even discussed Yilin's report, but only his attitude. It angered us. As we looked out the window, we saw posters going up on the wall of dormitory number 4. They were written by the students in the mathematics department. We ran down to have a look. "We rebel," said one. "We have no confidence in the work team. The number one task is to clarify who is a friend and who is an enemy, but the work team confuses us," said another. "Mao Zedong teaches us to rely on the masses. Why suppress the masses?" asked the third. Oh boy. Okay, students, we thought these posters were great, so we decided to write a few ourselves. We simply raised questions at random. We listed 12 problems concerning the work team. Why don't they trust the masses? Why do they gather the cadres together? Why do they prevent repudiation? We didn't have any organization then. We just wrote the posters and looked around for people to sign them. More than 20 people signed the first one, and we pasted it on dormitory number 3. Even before we had it up, someone came and took a picture of it. We didn't care. We weren't making any secret of our opinions. Just then, another student came by, read our message, and signed his name. The man with the camera then took a picture of all the names. As we climbed our stairs, a member of the work team came running out of breath. "Do you know what waving the red flag to oppose the red flag means?" he asked. Yeah, that's the definition of ultra-leftism. We laughed. How ridiculous. Why should a few mild criticisms create such a reaction? What a low political level. By evening, our group had 2, not just 1, work team members assigned to it, and people we didn't know began hanging around in front of our dormitory entrance. But we didn't pay much attention. We went right on attacking the capitalist blackgangers, and nothing much happened. Then, on June 23rd, Kwai Dafu, one of the most militant of the rebels, put up a big poster asking, "What's this all about, Comrade Yilin?" This poster concerned Liu Xiaoqi's wife, Wang Guangmei. It was rumored that she wanted to come to the campus to hear the complaints of the students firsthand. A woman cadre had appeared at the chemistry department, Kwai's home base, on June 22nd, and many students had talked their hearts out, thinking they were talking directly to a representative of the Central Committee. They then had found out that they had not spoken to Wang Guangmei at all, but to an ordinary member of the work team, none of whom the students trusted. Kwai asked what was behind all this trickery. Just to be clear, Wang Guangmei was at the campus at some point. It just wasn't her. It was someone else. It wasn't that random chemistry professor or whatever. Yeah. or work team member at the chemistry department. It was someone else. The fact that Liu Xiaoqi's wife went undercover to go fuck with the university is just so fucking... That's, on one hand, that is the most Liu Xiaoqi and co thing I have ever heard. On the other hand, that's really funny. You know. Oh boy. The work team's response was to call a public meeting in the name of the masses, who were said to be enraged by Kwai's questions. The work team mobilized all its supporters to pack the hall, take the best seats, and express indignation. Those who opposed the work team came later and had to take whatever seats were left. As a result, the majority inside the hall were reliable supporters of Yilin, while the masses who opposed him gathered outside. 30-year-old Wang Yongshan told us about this meeting. He was a middle peasant youth from Yantai, Shandong, who had been in the electrical engineering department of the university since 1961. Short, plump, with a flushed-round face and a long lock of hair hanging over his forehead, he was the most mature and most amiable of the former students we talked with. He had also held a higher position in the mass movement than the others. He had been a member of the headquarters committees of the Force faction and commander of the whole Western Front. They refer to him as a middle peasant, by the way, which means he or his family owns land and farms that land, but isn't rich enough to like hire other people to farm the land for them. They have to do it themselves. As opposed to a lower peasant, which would be someone who doesn't own any land and has to get hired by someone else to work the land. Or an upper peasant, which would be more like you own some land and you're able to hire other people to work the land along with you. But it's not quite the same as being like an actual feudal lord, obviously. The landlords were different people. They were not peasants. Anyway. Also, they note that all peasants are now equal members of producers' cooperatives, hence these terms refer to class origins in the old society, not present class status. Yeah, that's what it was before the whole feudal system was abolished. And they say now, but this book was also from the 1970s, so just to keep that in mind that this book is literally 50 years old or so. Alright. I went late to the meeting, said Wong. By the time I got there, the whole hall was crowded. It was so full that many people who couldn't find a place to stand were leaving, but I was privileged. I could put on an armband which carried the designation picket. Since I was vice leader of our department's picket squad, I could go wherever I wanted. I got into the meeting and pushed my way right up front to the stage to help keep order. That was no small task, for this turned out to be Kwai's great debate with the work team leaders. So many people had come forward with critical opinions that Kwai was on the offensive and the work team was on the defensive. If the latter hadn't packed the hall, it wouldn't have been would have been a rout. As it was, the confrontation was much larger and more bitter than we expected. Before it was over, Kwai's supporters had forced their way in and taken over one side of the hall, while the work team and its supporters had held diminishing grounds on the other side. Each side applauded its own speakers, shouting and clapping, and the meeting ended in a near riot. Kwai's supporters clearly had the best arguments, and besides, they were united and well-disciplined. We were very excited, said Wu, breaking in at this point. We shouted and clapped as loud as we could. Later, whether you clapped for Kwai or not became the dividing line between a counter-revolutionary and a revolutionary. The whole meeting was run according to Beijing tradition, continued Wong. You clapped for your own side and you sent up notes. We clapped for Kwai and sent up notes in support, and we also sent notes to the work team questioning both their arguments and their political level. The chairman of the meeting was none other than Liu Tao, Liu Shaqi's daughter. Once again. She debated with Kwai, but was no match for him. She couldn't even rally her own forces and finally ended up saying, "My mother says the work team must be trusted." I would never trust anything that Wong Guangmei thinks. Sorry. Sorry, hun. Ain't happening. We responded with a sentence from our recent editorial. Revolutionary posters are the mirror that shows up cow devils and snake gods. Since Liu Tao couldn't control the meeting, we rebels were on top. This forced Yulin and the work team vice leader to come out onto the stage. Right there, they dropped all pretext this was a meeting of, by, and for the masses. You have made the work team your target. Doesn't that mean the Communist Party is your target? Shouted Yulin. Ooh. He then announced that Kwai Dafu's poster was definitely counter-revolutionary. Hence, Kwai Dafu himself was a counter-revolutionary. This made us angry. We shouted, "How can you decide this by looking at one poster? Where is your evidence?" Yulin's answer was to hold his head high, raise both arms in the air, and shout, "I represent Mao Zedong! I represent the Communist Party!" We clapped, whistled, and booed in an effort to drive him from the stage, and he shouted back, "If I don't represent the Communist Party, who does? Does Kwai Dafu? You must choose between us." When we started to debate these questions, neither Yulin nor the other work team members had anything to back up their argument, so they tried to settle the case by putting big hats on us all. They called us counter-revolutionaries who opposed the work team, opposed the municipal party committee, and opposed the central committee. Thus, they tried to substitute political pressure for reasoning. They had begun by debating concrete problems, but now, at bay and unable to back up their arguments, they just put hats on us all and called us names. At this point, Liu Tao intervened, saying, "My mother says there should be no more debate." We asked, "Where in the hell is your mother? She's not here." Little did we know that Wang Guangmei was actually on the campus, hiding out in the president's old house. Yep, told ya. She was in touch by telephone from time to time, and from time to time called in her instructions. We later learned that she wanted to come to the meeting in person, but had been advised to stay in the background. I think Wang Guangmei coming to the meeting would have been a big mistake. I think advising her to stay in the background was probably a good idea. A mistake on her part. Like, if she had come there, that would have pissed them off. Way more. Rightfully so. Like, Liu Tao shouldn't even be there in the first place. Neither of them should be there. But of course they have to be there, you know. Liu Shaoqi sent the work team after all. Gotta send his people. Once again, don't leave Liu Shaoqi in charge of anything. Come on, Mao, what are you doing? You know, when Mao went up and started the Cultural Revolution, you know, he paraded, you know. And Liu Shaoqi was standing next to him, you know, in the car as he was speaking to people, and he's talking about how, like, the enemy is right here, the enemy is with us, or whatever, you know. Did people realize he was talking about Liu Shaoqi at that time? Not really. But he was standing right next to him. There's probably a picture of it, actually. Hold on. Let's see here. I don't know if my... God, I cannot spell. I cannot spell. Okay, I spelled it right this time. I'm looking for... I've literally seen this picture before, and I don't know where it is. But there is actually a picture of that somewhere. Of that particular parade or whatever it was. His speech. Boy. The problem is that there's about 500 million other pictures of Liu Shaoqi and Mao together. So it's going to be really hard to find the exact one that I'm looking for. Oh boy. Yeah, I don't know. I know I've seen it, but I don't know where I found it, so... It's out there somewhere. If you find it, then there you go. Then you can see it yourself, I guess, if you find it. But I can't find it right now. It's probably, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's one of the pictures I'm looking at right now, but there's also like 1,000 of them. Oh boy. Anyway. So anyway, after it was all over, and we all gathered in excited knots and agreed that the work team was unreasonable, that it was in fact terrible, said Zhu. The more we talked, the more we felt that they had violated Mao Zedong thought. Ooh. Most of us didn't sleep all night, but instead wrote new big character posters. The title of ours was, Is this the attitude of true Marxist-Leninists? I like how immediately petty this all became. In this poster, several students analyzed the big meeting for debate and the work team's attitude toward criticisms. We called on the work team to trust the masses and to rely on the masses to carry the Cultural Revolution through to the end. Counterattacks such as this led to differences inside the work team, which its leaders did not know how to resolve. In order to hold the work team together, Wang Guangmei stepped gingerly out into the open, saying, Liu Shaoqi has asked me to look into affairs here at Tsinghua. Oh boy. She called several hundred work team members together in the chemistry building and told them the line that must be followed, which was that the big meeting for debate had been a counter-revolutionary incident and that Kwai Da-fu had been proven to be a counter-revolutionary. She then accused everyone who joined the opposition of having conspired to pack the meeting hall in order to challenge her daughter, Liu Tao. Are you starting to understand why so many people hate Di Shaoqi and his family and his followers? Are you getting it now? It's not just the fact that they were obviously capitalists. It's the fact that they were assholes as well. Extremely arrogant assholes. Oh boy. Let me see something. Hold on. Let me pull up. I just want to see real quickly. I'm going to pull up Silas Travers and Snakes Ritz because they reference something that I wanted to find. Hold on. Oh. Hello. Please search. Search. There we go. Working on it. Okay, found it. Okay. As much as I reference this book, I don't ever bring it up very much. Let me see here. Hold on. Let me see if I can find just search standing. I wonder if that'll help. No, that's later. Okay, so this isn't what I'm looking for, but I really want to read this because it's really funny. This is let's see here. This is Zhou Enlai talking about Lin Biao. Let's see here. So Zhou Enlai says that Mao said, "Look at all the statues of me. There I am standing, out there alone in the cold and the rain." So Zhou Enlai had to go around and get rid of Lin Biao and the Gang of Four's long-lived Chairman Mao stuff, the loyalty dance, blah blah blah. Poor Zhou was left to sort of calm it all down. He told us how Lin Biao said that one word of Mao's was worth 10,000 words. And that Mao's response to him was, "Yeah, but you don't even listen to one word, so that's 10,000 words you don't listen to." Boy. I think this story kind of sums up everything about Mao that I personally like. I don't know, like This man was just like, yeah, like, you know, you have to give it to him on this one. Oh my god. The fuck is with all these statues of me? What are you doing? God, you don't listen to fucking anything I say. Why do you keep fucking turning me into a god? What is this shit? Oh boy, oh boy. The reason why I'm searching standing is because, yeah, I need to go backwards until I can find this, I'm pretty sure the word standing is going to show. By the way, this book also talks a lot about exactly what we're reading about right now. But what we're reading, the book we're reading, is much more in depth. This is, I think, when I started reading this book, I mentioned this, that this book here, Southern Shovers and Snake Spirits, already talked about the events that are covered in the book we're not reading, but that I was very interested in learning more about it because it sounded fucking wild, so it's good that there's a whole book about it. Anyway, I am trying to find... So, there it is. That's what it is. Okay, so I was correct. Managed to find it. So here we go. This is exactly what I was looking for. So basically, Mao went out to hey ATS. We're taking a slight diversion because I thought of a particular event that because we're talking about Liu Shaoqi a lot. So let's see here. So whoever they're talking about here is going. They want to go see. Apparently, Mao is on a caravan going around to talk to people. So Mao drove by, standing up in the back of a jeep, followed by Liu Shaoqi, Zhou Enlai, and Judah rather. After they went by, it wasn't very long. We were standing on our bikes, which it suddenly occurred to us that something was going on, or when it occurred to us something was going on. That was the last time Mao ever saw the Red Guards, and he saw them with Liu Shaoqi. He was just so sharp. The day we saw him with Liu Shaoqi was the day the Taoyuan experience Dazibao, or the day we saw the Taoyuan experience Dazibao, the first attack against Liu Shaoqi. Mao's first Dazibao said, "Bombard the headquarters. The Khrushchevs are nestled right beside us." Right beside us. Who's right beside Mao? Oh, right, Liu Shaoqi. This is indeed perhaps one of the most famous lines from the Cultural Revolution in general, bombard the headquarters. So they're gonna go on. It says Mao already understood that Liu Shaoqi was the leader of the rightist line in the party that was committed to taking China towards, or that the rightist line in the party that was committed to taking China towards. I think they missed a word there. I think they might have missed the word capitalism or something there. That's what it sounds like. Anyway, he also understood that simply taking away Liu's power would be useless unless the people, the masses, also understood the ideological struggle and called for his ouster themselves. Correct? Without emboldening the people through campaigns to raise their level of political and ideological consciousness, the line struggle would be fought out at the upper levels of party leadership, leaving the people in the position of being manipulated in the struggle for power. The masses, through their own reaction to the oppression, discovered Liu Shaoqi. Mao never said it was Liu Shaoqi, he just said to bombard the headquarters that it was somebody right there. He left Beijing and let Liu Shaoqi use his hand and let the people find out who it was. That method was incredible. They found Liu Shaoqi so fast. Yeah, so this is exactly what we're talking about right now. Like, Mao goes to the south of the country and leaves Liu Shaoqi in charge. And now this book that we're reading, the actual book we're reading, this is just one part of the consequences of that, of how people started to realize that Shochi is such a massive fucking asshole. Oh boy, like I said, at least in my opinion. Mao was such a rapscallion. But like, oh my god. I love that other quote that I went over, the random one that showed up with Mao complaining about, why are you putting up statues about me, or statues of me? What the fuck is that? I'm just standing out there all alone in the rain. I love that quote. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? It's what's amazing is that Mao had to constantly complain about people doing this to him all the time. Like, he was always doing this. People kept like trying to idolize him in various ways, and he was always complaining about it. Nobody ever stopped, no matter what he said. Like he said, you don't even listen to one word of what I say. It's also really funny that Zhou and I had to go clean up that particular mess with Li Biao. That is definitely the general impression of Zhou and Lai that I have is definitely, well, that definitely fits. That definitely fits, I'm not gonna lie. It's reinforcing my biases. Gotta go fix this shit again. But right. Then fucking Joe and I having to clean up everyone else's messes in the party that does sound about right. Oh boy. Alright, anyway. Continuing. So Wang Guangmei, Liu Shaoqi's wife, is complaining to the students at the university who are rebelling, saying that you've conspired to challenge my daughter, Liu Tao. In fact, the majority in the hall had acted spontaneously. Only a few had made prior contacts or had gone to the meeting with a group. By the next day, partly as a result of the work team's repressive attitude, student sentiment was almost unanimous. 18 of 20 in one class signed a critical poster, and this was by no means an unusual proportion. Students in another class wrote a poster saying, "Yulin, what are you angry about?" By the time they completed it and took it outside, they found a whole battery of other posters attacking Yulin and the work team already in place. Once again, I just have to bring up... hold on. It should not be too difficult to find pictures of this, by the way. As usual, this is like sort of the best exemplary photo. Well, there are several good exemplary photos of the Dazibao, but I just... This one is the perfect one to use in this situation because we're talking about students writing them all up, and putting them all over the place. Here's another picture. Yeah. This is great. I know I've said this a million times, but this is one of like my favorite, favorite little traditions. It's a very old tradition of doing these posters, like it stems back to the imperial times, like a very long time ago in China. Anyway, very very ancient method of protest. Anyway. All right, so let's see here. All right, here we go. In our class, we rebels had only numbered 6. After that night's meeting, the whole class joined the rebels. We couldn't all get into one room and talk it over. People sat on the upper and lower bunks, on the windowsill, on chairs, stools, and the floor. 20 in one room. We 6 from the original rebel group did most of the talking and gave background information. What? It's funny that you say that, but like, I get what you're going for, but on one hand, the abolition of the old feudal cultural norms and whatnot is generally desirable, but the point in this case, this particular tradition is one of rebellion and protest, usually previously against the emperor and whatnot, usually was how it originated. Let me see how far back. Like, let's see here. Dajiba have been used in China since imperial times. Let's see here. Wall posters have been used in China to publicly announce royal edicts, pronouncements, and various orders since at least the Zhou dynasty, 3,000 years ago. That's not in protest though. But these let's see here. The oldest example that we have of them being used in protest is almost 2,000 years old. 172 AD. Yeah. So anyway, it's a almost 2,000-year-old tradition of a method of protest, and I love that. Anyway, the people were not happy with the imperial eunuchs in 172 AD, apparently. They had to protest against them, and they put up a bunch of posters criticizing them. Those imperial eunuchs. Such rascals. Alright, let's see here. So, we told our comrades how the team had suppressed the masses in the other departments and other units. We said, "You can see from last night's meeting that the work team is no good." The work team member assigned to our class stood quietly to one side taking notes. We didn't care. We went right on discussing. We thought the work team was the most serious problem. So anyway, I started describing. We just went right on discussing. We thought the work team was the most serious problem. Of course, we had fallen behind in the struggle against University President Jiang Nanxiang, but it was more important to carry this new struggle through to the end. And that night, we wrote 6 more big character posters. I myself wrote one that questioned Zhou Qiping, vice leader of the work team. My poster said, "How big you talk? What do you mean you represent Mao Zedong? This statement alone shows that you don't have an ounce of Mao Zedong thought in you." Not gonna lie, he's kind of right about that one. Yeah. that little line earlier where he's going up like, "I represent Mao Zedong." Really, dude? Do you? Because you don't. Mao didn't send you. Liu Shaoqi sent all of you. Mao left. He's not there right now. He left Liu Shaoqi in charge, and now Liu Shaoqi is doing this. He's sending his fucking daughter and wife to go fuck with it too. Like, hello? Other posters said, "Pursue this problem to the end. Our work team members, teachers, are scolders." Yep. Alright. That was chapter 4. Chapter 5. Pull out Kwai. In one night, those who opposed the work team went from the defensive to the offensive, and from the minority to the majority. Whereas before, critical posters could only be found on dormitory walls, now these same attacks showed up as central spots on the campus and on the long reed mats erected in front of important gathering places. That morning, the whole campus hummed as groups denounced the work team and debated the questions raised. The work team cadres did not accept this sudden reversal. They organized whatever supporters they could to continue the debate, to repudiate hostile posters, and to write posters of their own denouncing Kauai. If at sunrise all the public proclamations on the campus had been anti-team, by noon pro-team statements had begun to appear, and by 2 o'clock they were plastered everywhere, often right on top of the statements that they were designed to refute. Hundreds of people gathered in front of the meeting hall to debate the issues, while loyalists circulated among them, taking notes which could be used against the pro-Kauai elements in the future. Finally, the work team cadres took the initiative in organizing formal discussions, setting as the topic for debate in the various classes, "Why do you think Kwai Dafu is counter-revolutionary?" I don't. And most of the people don't either. Those are the people of the university. This did not work out well. Can we just... I think this kind of just... This is just a good quotation to, like, apply to maybe all of the events at the university during the Cultural Revolution in general. Just... This is the quotation that defines this book. This did not work out well. It only gets worse from here, folks. If you know anything about what happened at this university after this is just the beginning, y'all. This is not gonna work out well. Only one person in Ju's group said he thought Kawhi deserved the epithet. All the rest said he definitely did not. Since the majority expressed themselves so unanimously, the work team member assigned to this class stopped promoting the idea and fell silent. His isolation did not prevent him from taking careful notes, however. At 4 o'clock, the work team called for a meeting of all students in the first category, the staunch revolutionary left. What they had done was to divide the student body into 5 categories. First, the staunch revolutionary left, made up by those who supported the work team. Oh, of course they would say that they're the staunch revolutionary left. Of course they would. I'm more left than you. I'm the real left. You're a counter-revolutionary. Made up of those who supported the work team. Then 4 categories of people with problems. The first 2 of these included all those who lacked understanding, whose wrong opinions were due to their low political level, and hence who could be treated as still among the ranks of the people. The third and fourth, I like this ridiculous infantilization of the people in general. The people are the ones who don't know shit, apparently. They have wrong opinions because of their low political level. That's what the people are like. Thanks, work team. Thanks, Wong Guangbei. Great job. Great job making yourselves look like the good guys here. Oh my god. The third and fourth of these categories included those whose opposition reflected a bourgeois class stand, and hence who demonstrated a contradiction between the people and their enemies. They were, in other words, the counter-revolutionaries. Work team being anti-mass line, huh? Well, it's because it's Liu Shaoqi's work team, headed up by his wife and daughter. Like, the other book was... They were not kidding when he said... You know, Mao just kind of left Liu in charge. Went off on his own. And, he just left Beijing. Let Liu Shaoqi do whatever he wants, and then people very quickly found out that Liu Shaoqi is in it for personal political gain. Among other things. Anyway, out of my whole group, said Wang, only one student was qualified to attend the meeting of the staunch revolutionary left. It's just classic vanguardist bullshit, y'all. He was the one who thought Kawhi a counter-revolutionary. With such a meeting underway, we knew something bad would happen, and sure enough, the next day the work team sent for me and gave me an official Communist Party warning. I was expelled from the picket squad, membership in which had allowed me to come and go at will, and had to turn in my armband. Classmates were mobilized to write posters against me, asking, "Where does your class stand?" It's really funny that the ones who are allied with Liu Shaoqi's group are the ones calling other people bourgeois counter-revolutionaries. Like, hello? Projection much? Anyway, on June 28th, I was required to make a self-criticism. The work team leader said my problem was very serious, but since my brother was a revolutionary martyr, they decided not to call me a counter-revolutionary. 4 others weren't so lucky. Drew described the work team's counteroffensive in equally stark terms. In the morning, we put up our posters. By afternoon, we found many posters on our dormitory wall attacking us. Then we saw that the curtains were drawn over the windows of the meeting hall, and that guards had been posted all around, a veritable sentry line. Only one of our classmates had been invited to this meeting. When he came back, he said, "You are all counter-revolutionaries." Since we counter-revolutionaries were so numerous, they had to find students from other departments to come and debate with us. It's not quite the same as Bolsheviks and Mensheviks in this case. I get what you're saying, but it's actually not. They're not actually that comparable. Oh boy. Let's see here. So, since we counter-revolutionaries were so numerous, they had to find students from other departments to come and debate with us. The idea was to try and win us over, but actually they used a mental club. "You must thoroughly and completely confess your counter-revolutionary plots against the Communist Party and socialism," they said. God. Yep. That sounds about right. That's I think when people talk about certain communists acting like this, a lot of other communists get angry and say that it's a straw man or whatever. And it's like, no, you don't understand. There really were a lot of people like that. Like, no, that actually happened, y'all. Like, we're not exaggerating. There are a lot of people who have convinced themselves that they are like the real vanguard and everyone else is a counter-revolutionary against socialism, the Communist Party. Are you sure? Am I sure that this situation isn't actually that comparable to the Bolsheviks versus the Mensheviks? Yes. Like, I understand why you think that, but I just think you're wrong. I think it's, there is something to be said there, but it's just not actually that similar. Thus, it went with anyone who protested the line or the actions of the work team. They were accused of anti-party activity and threatened with serious consequences. While dormitories were asked to write self-criticisms, and no self-criticism was considered to be valid unless it raised the problem to the level of principle. That is, unless it agreed that the mistakes under discussion were both objectively and subjectively counter-revolutionary. The campism is what you're noticing. Yeah, but that's an extraordinary... Like, that's so general. Like, that's such a... Like, that... If, like, is that all there is to the comparison? Because, like I just don't think that's that much of a connection there. I mean, like, I also get the, like, one side is clearly, like, more capitalistic than the other thing, but, like, this is, I don't know, it's just, as Mao said, he called them Khrushchevists or Khrushchevs, right? That's what he said in his speech. He compared them to Khrushchev. The rightists in the party. That's how he compared them. And yeah, that's, if you want to make a comparison, I think Mao's comparison there is probably the one to go with, since he said it himself. That's the one he certainly thought it was, at the very least. I'm not really sure who Mao would be in that case, though, because he wouldn't be the same as Stalin. He regularly criticized Stalin too, so that's not really... It's really funny. There was one quote. I always have trouble finding it, but I know it's in there because we read it on stream once, and I found it a few other times, but I always forget where it is. But there was at some point where Mao is writing something about, it's like in a preface or a speech or something about something that's related to Stalin, and he was talking about something that Khrushchev wrote, repudiating Stalin economically, I think in terms of economic theory is what it was specifically. And Mao's like, well, we were really happy that people were criticizing Stalin, but we weren't so happy that it was Khrushchev doing it. It's like, yeah. Something along those lines. They're so like... Anyway, let's see here. So, even this was not enough, because each admission had to be backed up with facts which didn't exist. Thus, there was really no way to write a criticism that would satisfy the work team. All those who clapped for Quiet on June 23rd were called counter-revolutionary. More than 800 students found themselves in this category. Once the so-called counter-revolutionary cap was placed on any student's head, he lost his freedom. He was confined to quarters and was kept under guard day and night. Student guards even followed their suspects to the toilet. He was asked to write concrete self-criticisms endlessly, and at big and small meetings, he became an object of mass attack. At that time, there were big, small, old, and new counter-revolutionaries all over the place. In one class of 30 people, 12 were labeled counter-revolutionary, and 12 more were called sympathizers. The remaining 6 were not enough to stand guard over the others. They had to call in help from other classes. Students labeled this whole movement the White Terror. There's your comparison to Mensheviks. There you go. I'll give you that one. More than a few broke under the pressure and tried, with indifferent success, to write the confessions the work team was demanding. Jude described his own retreat. When the work team struggled against us, I was thinking, my family is so poor. We have struggled all of our lives. How could I oppose the Communist Party in Mao Zedong thought? They asked us to answer a whole series of questions. After they had spread all these rumors about Kwai Da-fu, I thought, maybe I am objectively anti-communist. So I made a self-criticism saying just that, but they wouldn't accept it. They said that in Chairman Mao's talks at the Yan'an Forum, objective and subjective are linked. One can't be objectively against the Communist Party without being involved subjectively as well. This, you know, all of those like stereotypical like things that capitalists, especially Western folks, often say about Stalin, which often in the case of Stalin wasn't actually that particularly true. Well, this is that, but real. Quite abandoned by one comrade after another, wrote the waverers a letter. Liu Kaitang, Wang Tiecheng, and all comrades who have supported me or sympathized with me. Now we are facing an extremely severe test. I firmly believe that up to now most of you have been staunch revolutionaries, but under Comrade Yelin's high-pressure policy, some of you have wavered, and some have surrendered. Some are presently confessing their so-called crimes. Through your lips, or though your lips move and your hands write, I actually believe the vast majority of you, really deep in your hearts, don't admit to the people that you have committed any crimes, because in fact you have not. The revolutionary spirit you had before cannot be wiped out by anyone. If temporarily under high pressure you have to bend a little, I can forgive you. But if you really go over, if your heart is dead, if you sell out your own comrades and betray your conscience, then in the future the revolution will not forgive you. I just want to remind everybody that the start of all this was some students unhappy with the university administration running things, trying to run things in the style of a Western university. This is what started all this. Remember. And then Liu Shaoqi caught wind of this and was like, all right, I'm sending in like 600 people. We're going to deal with this. How dare they? Do you see? Do you understand now? That isn't to say that, like, the students themselves were, like, not being overzealous with things. Like I said, they are being overzealous with things a lot, but sending in the work team did not help. It made things way worse. And you'll see at the end of these events what it took to actually end all of this. But before there, things are going to get much, much worse. Oh boy. As I've already told you several times, our opponents are very soft. Under the proletarian dictatorship, they don't dare do anything to the revolutionaries. On the surface, they look very strong and harsh, fierce and bullying, but actually they are paper tigers. They are frightened to death of us. The masses are temporarily deceived, but they will wake up eventually. In order to be responsible to the Central Committee of the Communist Party and to Mao Zedong, we have to develop our fearless revolutionary spirit. Fear nothing. Before liberation under the White Terror, the heroic revolutionary martyrs carried on a life and death struggle, throwing away their heads and pouring out their blood. They brought our people's power of today. We successors under the proletarian dictatorship, have we anything to be afraid of? Well, yes, actually. You'll see. But yes, I sincerely wish that at this very difficult and crucial time you will stand firm. The revolutionary train at high speed now turns a sharp corner. That's derailment time? The revolutionary train turning a sharp corner and getting derailed would be a fantastic metaphor to describe this. Sit still, hold fast, don't fall out, and break yourself in pieces. I won't force my opinions on those who resolutely betray us, but I have to tell you that you can only sell information on us. You can by no means sell out our revolutionary souls. Remember, the revolutionary big winds and waves are going to wash out all the dross and save the precious metal. Finally, I want to point out that even if temporarily only I am left, I will resolutely fight to the end. So long as one monster still exists on Tsinghua's campus, I will resolutely sweep him out. If I didn't reach this goal, I won't close my eyes when I die. Comrades, stand up and stiffen your backs. The Central Committee of the Communist Party and Chairman Mao Zedong fully support us. He hasn't actually said that, just to be clear. I just want to point out... Proof. Unite and fight bravely. Final victory is bound to be ours. Resolutely defend the Communist Party Central Committee and resolutely defend Chairman Mao Zedong. Resolutely defend Mao Zedong thought. Resolutely defend proletarian dictatorship and socialism. Long live Chairman Mao. Hey, remember that one thing that Mao said about... Hold on. By that time in spring '68, the schools had all reopened, and the kids were subjected to the rules of Mao worship as well. Both Billy and Fred were faced every morning with having to chant "Long live Chairman Mao" a bunch of times before they were let in the gate. Billy thought it was a bunch of nonsense, so he climbed the fence in the back and met his classmates inside. Do you see where this is going? But here's the thing, right? Once again, I'm going to read this again. I know I've already read it. I don't care. I'm going to read it again because it keeps coming up. This is Zhou Enlai saying, okay, Mao said, "Look at all the statues of me." Or wait, who is saying this? Who is saying this? Is it actually Zhou? Is Zhou saying this? I guess maybe it's Bill saying this about... I'm so confused, honestly. I'm thinking, oh, you know what it is? Bill is saying that Zhou is said that Mao said... I understand now. So Bill, the author of the book we're reading, says that supposedly Zhou Enlai says this. Mao said, "Look at all the statues of me. There I am, standing out there alone in the cold and the rain." Great line. And so then Zhou Enlai had to go around. This is now Bill talking. So then Zhou Enlai had to go around and get rid of Lin Biao and the Gang of Four's long-live Chairman Mao stuff, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, yeah. So, if many gave in and many others wavered, still a small band with Kwaidafu at its core stood firm and exchanged blow for blow polemically in the work team. They studied Mao Zedong's writings diligently and pasted slogans beside their beds such as, "If we live, we'll fight for Mao Zedong's line. If we die, we'll die for Mao Zedong's line." Or, "Fierce sprout, I coolly defy 1,000 pointing fingers. Head bowed like a willing ox, I serve the children." Joe said that Bill said, just to be clear, while the name does sound a lot like Joe, it's spelled like that in Pinyin. But it would be really funny if we decided to change the orthography of that Chinese name to Joe, because it is pronounced essentially the same, almost. Very similarly. Joe. Yeah, I guess it's more like Joe rather than Joe, but Joe is funnier, so I'm gonna call him Joe. Joe Unlai. Old Joseph Unlai. We love him. This little poem, by the way, is a famous couplet written by Lu Xun, China's most famous modern writer, to express his defiance of the reactionaries and his willingness to serve the people. Anyway, the rebels were convinced that as true supporters of Mao Zedong, they would win out in the end, so they all mobilized for all-out struggle against a work team that claimed to be Mao Zedong's sole representative and constantly urged everyone to have boundless faith in its decisions because it represented the Communist Party, the Central Committee, and Chairman Mao. So, as I've talked about many times before, this is one of the major problems in the Communist Party of China, okay, at this time, and still even presently. Everyone wants to associate themselves with Mao because Mao was extraordinarily popular, and Lin Biao purposefully making Mao even more popular for his own personal gain didn't help. But anyway, everyone wanted to be on Mao's side. They always said, "I'm with Mao," even when they completely opposed each other. Meanwhile, Mao was just sitting there like, "What the fuck are you all doing? Stop it. Get some help. What is this shit? Why don't you criticize me enough?" Gotta love it. Anyway, I think, again, like with Stalin, it's somewhat of a similar situation. It's not exactly the same, but like there was a bit of that kind of thing going on with Stalin as well. I think a lot of the like stuff that people talk about when they criticize, they use it as criticisms of Stalin himself. They talk about the cult of personality around Stalin, but again, like it's all these people who see that Stalin is popular, that want to associate themselves with him, and are then going out and doing all this ridiculous shit and calling each other counter-revolutionary in the name of Stalin. You know, it's the same kind of thing. And it's like, Stalin wasn't a fan of that either, you know. I just, in case you're wondering, I'm not a fan of Stalin, I'm an anarchist, but like, that particular criticism is one of the ones that's just like, that one does, as much as that kind of thing was happening, it wasn't really Stalin was not really the one doing it. A lot of people, this happens with both Mao and Stalin. I find that you get criticisms of them that don't really make that much sense, and then you get people praising them in ways that also don't make sense. Like, as an anarchist, obviously my criticisms of people like Mao or Stalin are going to be vastly different than those of liberals, generally speaking. Like, the problem is people will criticize, say, Mao for something that was actually good that he thought or said or did, and then won't criticize him for the actual fuck-ups, right? Okay, anyway. So, the students, or the rebels rather, let's see here, they were totally convinced that they were the true supporters of Mao Zedong. Okay, we have boundless faith in Chairman Mao, and Mao Zedong thought, the students countered, but as for faith in you, who are you? You are nothing. In the rebels' eyes, the work team was nothing, but its leader, Yulin, wielded state power at Jinhua and used it as to organize a whole series of mass meetings to expose and repudiate Kuai Dafu and his comrades. If Kuai Dafu, which means great wealth, in case you're wondering, that's what the name means, was target number 1, then Kuai Erfu, second wealth, and Kuai Sanfu, third wealth, became targets number 2 and 3. Kuais, it seemed, were to be found in every dormitory and every department. Pull out Kuai became the slogan of the day. It was spread far and wide by the work team. In order to understand what happened later, it is important to explain the extraordinary role that Kuai Dafu played at the time. Kuai was a wiry young man of poor peasant origin who had long been noted for brilliance and self-confidence. He wore glasses and heavy square frames that accentuated the width of his forehead and made his sharp chin seem even more pointed than it was, or than in fact it was. I don't think I have a sharp chin. I think my chin is a little bit... I have a kind of round... It's kind of rounded here. Yeah. Maybe if I lean over... No, it's kind of flat on the bottom. Kind of rounded. Anyway. Sharp chin. People remembered Kuai for his short stature, his triangular face, and his explosive oratory. How do you think he feels about that? Oh, I remember that really short dude with the triangular face. Oh yeah. Yeah, he talked a lot. He sure did. Kuai Dafu operated like the commanding general of an army that had absolute confidence in the rightness of its cause and absolute faith in final victory. When his support fell away around him, he never wavered or retreated 1 inch. On the contrary, he always seemed to be on the offensive, taking up and refuting each point made by work team leader Yilin in public speeches and a constant stream of wall posters that, even when they were almost immediately ripped off the walls, still tore the mantle of legitimacy off the work team and shook the whole campus and the city of Beijing. Clear-cut, sarcastic, like gusts of spring wind. His polemics dispersed cant and obscurantism. If the work team was to stand at all, it had to destroy Kuai, but the more vigorously it mobilized against him, the more tenaciously he mounted the counterattack. On June 29th, Kuai sent an open letter to Yilin in the form of a big character poster that went up in the middle of the campus where thousands could read it. Here are some of the excerpts. Comrade Yulin, how are you? Today I would like to say a few words to you. To tell the truth, I absolutely did not expect that little tiny Kuai Dafu would have such power to threaten that the work team had no alternative but to concentrate all its energy to beat me down. Never has there been such a large-scale movement, the whole school writing big character posters against one person, parading, demonstrating, holding campus-wide rallies, and broadcasting over the air. All these means have been used. Such a mobilization was never mounted against Jiang Nanxiang. I can't help but feel a twinge of joy. Who would have expected that Kuai Dafu was like a brick in a privy, both stinking and hard, and would never give up even unto death? You probably feel a little bit nervous, but if you feel very firm inside and you still have other tricks that you haven't brought out yet, that is fine. I am waiting. Just a side point here, I will use every means that I can to counter your attack. Comrade Yulin, please open your eyes and take a look. Who is supporting you? Those people who are loyalists. Now they just shake their bodies like the Monkey King and charge into the revolutionary left. Or change into the revolutionary left. These speculators in revolution have become your most helpful assistants. Even the former blackganger Yilu and his crowd now all shout loudly, "Support Comrade Yulin!" But the real left, the left that all along was clear-sighted, just because it has raised correct criticism of you, you see as a nail in the eye, a splinter in the flesh. You mount an attack, put on political pressure, force us to make self-criticisms, force us to confess so-called crimes. I feel hurt when I see this situation. I feel that many also, or this may also be what you, a real revolutionary, are not willing to see. Your high-pressure policy creates an atmosphere of terror. It reminds me of the high-pressure policy of the Black Party Committee of the school at an earlier time. They made people afraid to speak out. Then they began to be afraid that they couldn't square their reports with the top, so in a great rush they demanded that students raise criticisms. As for the situation at our school now, Comrade Eileen, I'm really worried about you. If you don't give lying reports, how can you square things with the new Beijing Municipal Party Committee? How can you square things with the Central Committee and Chairman Mao? Dear Comrade Eileen, time is very short. Time is pressing. You had better hurry up and draw up a plan and prepare for the next step. I am waiting patiently. I don't know why. My confidence grows stronger and stronger. When I pick up Chairman Mao's works, I feel that Chairman Mao is right beside me. Wishing you good health. A revolutionary salute. Kwaidafu, June 29th, 1966. In this and many other posters, which Kwai wrote at the time, one can see small sprouts of the kind of thinking that eventually transformed him from a motive force of the revolution at Tsinghua into one of its targets. Yeah, he's a little Robespierre-esque. Not gonna lie. He's getting there. Kwai's unusual self-confidence bordered on arrogance, an arrogance which, when matched against an oppressive work team, was positive and progressive, but when matched against fellow students who did not accept his leadership, turned into something ugly and dictatorial. When Kwai read Mao Zedong's words, he felt that the chairman was standing right beside him as Mao Jesus. Y'all. But when he looked at the cadres of the Communist Party, he tended to see nothing but capitalist roaders, and when he looked at the teachers of Tsinghua, he tended to see nothing but bourgeois academic authorities. Footnote. In the self-criticism Kwai made after the work team left, he admitted that he did not believe that 95% of the teachers and 95% of the cadres were good, as Chairman Mao had stated repeatedly. What Mao Zedong meant was that the vast majority of the teachers and cadres could correct their mistakes and make a significant contribution to the socialist revolution if they were properly led. In other words, they were friends, not enemies, and had revolutionary potential. Kwai regarded them as hopeless. Oh boy. From this, it was but a small leap to I am the core, which made unity in the struggle against revisionism all but impossible. In nomine et Patri et Spiritus Mao. It's the only time I'm going to accept Latin on the stream. Oh boy, Latin is counter-revolutionary. unless we're replacing Catholic slogans with replacing Jesus with Mao, then it's okay. It's just America delineast. Correct. That's okay. That's correct. There we go. We got that one. That's the good line. Oh boy. In a secret message to his closest companions, Kwai warned that as long as they were called counter-revolutionaries, they should not admit the slightest weakness or the slightest error, lest it be used by the work team to beat them down. In the situation that then existed, this was perhaps a justifiable tactic, but it laid the groundwork for a cynical disregard for truth in the factional struggles which followed. Each side hiding its own mistakes and lying about its actions while grabbing at every weakness of the other side, blowing small errors to huge proportions in order to destroy the opposition politically. And eventually, physically, when they brought in the actual tanks and grenades and guns. We'll get there though. All this, however, only came out later. At the time, when Kwai's comrades, the embattled rebels, saw in him what they saw in him was fearlessness, principal opposition to an impressive work team, polemical skill of high order, and extraordinary leadership ability. Kuai Dafu became a hero to the left, not only at Tsinghua but throughout the country, and his group published a large volume of his speeches and writings as a means of exposing the bourgeois reactionary line of Liu Shaoqi and rallying students all over the nation to rebellion. If an extraordinary figure, Kuai Dafu stood at one pole on the Tsinghua campus, at the other pole stood an unlikely figure, Wang Guangmei, Liu Shaoqi's wife. I'm not sure if this is an unlikely figure. I don't know about that. We'll see. As the work team ran into resistance and came up against the formidable talents of Kuai and his iron rods, okay, the hardcore rebels, Liu Shaoqi sent Wang Guangmei in person to put down the rebellion. She was careful not to show her face in public or even to use her own name. She went by the name of Ho Pu, or simply Xiaoho, Little Ho. She arrived at night and left at night, wearing a cloak over her head and shoulders. Can we talk about this? I see what they mean at unlikely figure. More like unassuming, I don't know. Unlikely, unassuming, I don't know. Yeah, she's all... she's all like hiding up in her... sneaking in. Oh my god. She sneaks in at night wearing a cloak and then leaves before the sun comes up. This is comical levels of like... This reads like a... I don't know, it just does not read like real life, y'all. It's kind of like it's like the big bad sending a spy in, you know, I mean, this basically is like she's kind of like Grima, right? She's like Wormtongue maybe a little bit. Saruman is Liu Shaoqi in this case maybe. It is really funny that Yu Tao, Liu Shaoqi's daughter, was also there openly, but then also Wang Guangmei was there secretly. When on campus, she stayed at House A, which the creaking wooden-floored mansion that I've already described. It was well suited to her cloak and dagger style. I don't have a cloak, and I don't have a dagger. I have other knives, but no daggers. I'm not a stabbing type of person. I have knives for like cutting boxes open and cutting food. That's what I use my knives for, generally speaking. Not so much of a stabber. It's not my thing. Don't need daggers. And feel free to change that, anyone. You want to send me some cool daggers? I still won't stab anyone, but put them on display or something. I don't know. They're cool. Use them as ritual knives. I don't know. I'm always up for free knives. Alright, let's see here. Anyway, so, it was well suited to her cloak and dagger style, for it was Wang Guangmei herself who pioneered the concept of the work team as a sort of undercover investigation group, slipping into a community behind the backs of its known leaders and taking depositions from all the dissatisfied and disgruntled elements in order to get the lowdown on the countries in power before even talking to them. This, it seemed, was the essence Wang Guangmei had extracted from her peach orchard experience. Her work in the Hebei village of that name, and was now extending to her work at one of China's most important university campuses. If Wang Guangmei operated behind the scenes, the same could hardly be said of Liu Tao, her daughter, who stepped conspicuously to the front to take the lead among the student loyalists who supported the work team. Liu Tao paired up with He Pengfei, Marshal He Long's son, to carry out among the masses the political directives coming from above. Did Liu Tao have talent or leadership ability? Apparently not. She was a spoiled young woman, a debutante type, interested in fashion and personal pleasure, and could not make a coherent speech. I'm sorry. That is Yeah. But she was Li Xiaoqi's daughter, she was loyal, and she had some prestige among those students who remained impressed by her background. When the Cultural Revolution began, no one thought that Liu Xiaoqi might be a target. How he became one is part of the whole Tsinghua story, and so to be the daughter of the head of state gave one a lead in that wing of the student movement that set out to protect party people in power. The shade, yeah. The university I went to, at the time when I went there, at least for a couple of the years that I was there, my dad was working in the administration there. He wasn't like the president or something, but wasn't quite, I don't know. In this case, it's like a little bit different, a little bit different situation, but like, I was always basically trying to hide who I was. Like I absolutely hated the idea of people knowing me as like my father's kid, just because my father was in the administration of the university. I was just like, never told anyone about that. No one ever, only a couple people ever figured it out, actually. He wasn't in the engineering department, so that helped. So I didn't very often interact with people who knew who he was. But yeah. Oh boy. So I guess Liu Tao here is kind of the opposite. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're Liu Xiaoqi's daughter. Wow. You're so cool. So anyway, they made a reference to Helong, which is, okay, rather, sorry. So, He Pengfei, Helong's son, was teamed up with Liu Tao. Okay. So, Helong was made one of the 10 marshals of the People's Liberation Army in the 1950s. He's famous as an early guerrilla fighter who reportedly went into the hills in the 1920s armed with a vegetable knife. That's about all I have, too. Like, wait, a vegetable knife? Like a paring knife? Or a... Oh, it might be more of a Chinese slicing knife. They look kind of like a Chinese cleaver, but they're much thinner. You use them for slicing vegetables, mainly. Very thinly. Whereas the cleavers are chunky, and you chop with them. Anyway, but they look similar. I think that might be what they're talking about. Which is a really funny thing to be armed with, because it's like not helpful as a weapon at all if that's the case. It's not a particularly effective weapon. It's clunky due to its shape, and it's also like quite thin and would kind of. It's made for slicing vegetables. You know, I mean, that's what if that's what he's talking about. Let me actually see if I can pull up what I mean. I'm just going to search Chinese vegetable knife and see if it is indeed the kind of thing I'm talking about. Yeah, okay, it is. Yeah, this is what I'm envisioning. This is the blade shape here. This is a very thin. It's not the same as the cleavers, which are thicker. They look the same, like they have very similar blade shapes, but the cleavers are much thicker and made for big choppy, whereas the vegetable knives, like I showed there, are thinner, made for slicey. Anyway, at first I was thinking about like a paring knife, but then I realized that a paring knife is more of a Western thing. Not that they don't have paring knives there, it's just that like a Chinese vegetable knife is a specific thing, so it's like, anyway. He carried one of those around. Not very useful as a weapon, but you know, that's all he had. I'm not sure what I would use if I had to choose one of my knives. I mean, the biggest one is my chef's knife. I feel like a chef's knife is actually much more useful as a weapon in a way than a Chinese vegetable knife. Yeah, because it's pointier. You could actually probably stab someone with it. It wouldn't work very well. I feel like it's a little slashier as well, right? It's slashier and pointier. Stabbing wouldn't work too well because it's only one-sided, but I don't know. my advice is that if you need to stab someone, well, that would be illegal, generally speaking. But if you had to do it in self-defense, I don't know. A dagger is usually made for stabbing. You need a dagger for that. I don't know, y'all. I'm not exactly a stabbing expert. Okay, I'm a complete novice when it comes to stabbing people. I've never done it. You know, I've only studied the theory. No one's ever stabbed me either, so I don't even have any I don't have any hands-on experience with stabbing. Sorry, I'm not the expert here. Anyway. So anyway, he has always been something of an individualist and a maverick. After liberation in 1949, he headed the Central Sports Commission. He was identified quite early on in the Cultural Revolution as a Liu Shaoqi supporter in the military establishment, and this designation has never been questioned or reversed. His line in sports was typically revisionist, leading to an establishment of a sports elite rather than promoting a mass movement useful to all. Of course. So anyway, So, when the Cultural Revolution began, no one thought that Liu Shaoqi might be a target. How he became one is part of the whole Qinghua story, and so to be the daughter of the head of state gave one a lead in that wing of the student movement that set out to protect party people in power. He Pengfei's leadership was likewise based on family prestige. It was not actually based, it was cringe, just to be clear. For he himself had no outstanding ability. Indeed, he had done such poor work in school that he had slipped into the university through the back door. In his entrance examination, he received less than 50 points, at least 20 below the minimum for admittance. He had been shunted off to Qinghua Middle School for a year of extra work, then quietly included in a later first-year class, all of which showed, said the rebel students, that before grades all were not equal, that a high country's child found open doors where others found only a blank wall. Liu Tao and He Pengfei also benefited temporarily from the 5 Red policy, according to which the early student militants admitted only the sons and daughters of good social categories to their ranks. The 5 good or red categories were the workers, the poor and lower middle peasants, the revolutionary cadres and the revolutionary soldiers, and the revolutionary martyrs. If your parents were none of these, you were beyond the pale as far as the early Red Guards were concerned. The theory of revolutionary inheritance that thus developed differed little from the old feudal concept that a dragon begets a dragon, a phoenix begets a phoenix, and the son of a mouse, from the day of his birth, knows how to dig a hole in the ground. The shade just keeps coming. With this as a theoretical base, the sons and daughters of high cadres often stepped forward very actively when the Cultural Revolution began. They found it easy to rebel against school authorities, for they resented discipline and any kind of restriction. Proud, privy to much inside information, they had always enjoyed privileges as compared to the children of the rank and file. They took it for granted that they were revolutionary successors, and so found it easy to struggle against others. But once their own parents were attacked and overthrown, their status dropped drastically, and their morale collapsed. What's this footnote? There's a footnote about the early Red Guards. Here, all mass organizations of middle school and university students that were formed once the Cultural Revolution began in 1966 can be lumped together under the designation Red Guards. Yeah, I'd agree with that, which is what the first rebel units in the Qinghua Middle School call themselves. I think that's a decent enough definition of how the Red Guards started out, yeah. So, there was no such thing as a nationwide Red Guard organization, but rather a plethora of diverse groups all committed to defending Mao Zedong, supposedly, while in practice taking opposite sides on specific questions. Yeah, exactly. We're all with Mao. Look, we're against you, even though you also say you're with Mao. Just like, I'm with Mao. We're the real people with Mao. We're the real Mao Zedong thought supporters, you know. The real revolutionaries. Classic. Anyway, I'm not sure if people are getting, I'm not sure what impression people are getting so far about the Cultural Revolution from this book, and possibly from myself as well, because I have my own opinions, obviously. But I think while it's true that this book is more about the problems of the Cultural Revolution than it is about the general idea of it and what the point of it was, at least initially, supposed to be. It kind of, we're talking about the events at this university that they didn't really become particularly interesting until things became a mess, right? Until things turned bad, otherwise it was just like, oh well, they're protesting against the outdated methods of teaching and shit, and like running the university like a Western university. Okay, like that's kind of boring. Like, okay, yeah, great, like normal, okay, whatever. Like that's there's nothing particularly interesting about that except that, like, I mean, that's good, but it's not. It only really gets interesting when the bad things start happening, now doesn't it, right? When the factionalism starts coming up. Right? But, like, generally speaking, I mean, if you, depending on your, personal opinions on what the facts of the situation are. I mean, it really does depend on your opinions of what the facts supposedly are. Just to be clear, this is one of those things where a lot of people think very different ideas about what actually happened and what the motivations were behind the Cultural Revolution for all the people involved. Well, the answer is that there were so many people involved, and there were very many different motivations that people had to involve themselves in various ways in this. And so it's kind of, you can't just reduce it to, it was a bunch of petty factionalism. That was one part of it. Yes, that happened. That was bad, quite bad. It was one of the biggest failures of the movement, for sure, right? But that's not the whole story. Just to be clear, I just want to make that clear, because we're focusing on the bad here mainly. We're not really talking about the sort of overall goals of the movement, like debureaucratization and decentralization and fighting against so-called Khrushchevs, like Dushashi in this case, right? Bombarding the headquarters, the paper revolution, blah, 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 right? We haven't talked about that really very much at all, except, like, yeah, sure, they have these factions, like, initially, like, they're realizing that Liu Shaoqi is stoking this factionalism himself and blah, 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 like, but, like, as far as the initial goals of the movement were, from Mao's perspective, at least from people who support Mao's perspective, they would usually say, like I said, that the goal was, essentially debureaucratization and decentralization and fighting against the right-wingers in the party, right? These were a lot of the main goals. It was the point, as far as people who support Mao go, the point for them these days, of the Cultural Revolution was to do a lot of things, but fighting against over-centralization of power in the Communist Party and the bureaucratization and ridiculous and a lot of other ridiculous bullshit is generally considered to be one of the bigger goals. Who let the right-wingers into the party? Oh boy. I'm not going to answer that question. That's a long story. That's a complicated thing. You can't just... It's a little more... I'm not sure if you're trying to imply something with that. I'm gonna leave that one alone for now. Boy, I can't tell if that's like a little sarcastic or something. Oh boy. Okay, let's see here. So as they say, there was no such thing as a nationwide Red Guard organization. The Red Guard designation became universally popular after Mao Zedong met with some of the early groups who went by that name and donned one of their armbands. Right. Anyway, so let's see here. So these sort of proteges, these young sons and daughters of the higher up party members and whatnot were often expelled from the units to which they belonged or had even led, and they became extremely confused. To attack school authorities was one thing. To attack and expose one's own family, one's own parents, was another. As one high cadre after another was deposed, after let's see here. These revolutionary successors lost their footing completely. The inheritance theory on which they had based their ascendancy also collapsed. In fact, it was already under attack by Mao Zedong and his supporters on the Central Committee, who challenged the whole idea as undialectical and anti-Marxist. I love it when people challenge something as undialectical. Can we talk about this? This is one of those, and anti-Marxist. This is one of those things where it's just like, people love to say this. They love to say this kind of thing, where they say that something is, they'll quote Lenin on something that is completely obvious, or like, you don't need to quote Lenin for that. Like, in this case, it's completely unnecessary to criticize, like, the idea that is kind of put forward, at least by the way this sentence frames it, is that Mao is challenging the idea of this so-called revolutionary successors or theory of revolutionary inheritance or whatever. The framing of this kind of makes it sound like Mao specifically challenged it because it was, quote, undialectical and anti-Marxist. But the thing is, what is the actual problem here? Can we talk about this? What is the actual problem with this idea of like, oh, well, they're the son of some big party member, must be themselves, we gotta raise them up, we gotta, treat them like they're gonna be exactly the same, and a big old super revolutionary comrade, You can't treat them as individuals, apparently. They're magically inheriting the revolutionary spirit, or whatever. Can we talk about how you don't need to think about this as undialectical? That's not the problem here. It's undialectical. It's undialectical. That's the... Like, what does that mean? You can't just say that. Anti-Marxist. Like, I mean, yeah, like, kind of the idea of, like, this sort of inherited merit, Sure, Marxists are generally against that sort of thing. But it's not just Marxists here. It's not just the revolutionary case. It must be maintained, yeah. It's like, it's not just Marxists who are against this. It's not just that it's undialectical. Right? You don't need dialectics to understand that this is bad. You don't need to be a Marxist to understand that this idea, that this, like, fucking, oh my god. Anyway. How, with such a theoretical base, could young revolutionaries ever unite 95% of the people and 95% of the cadres against the main enemy, the revisionists? Mao's wife, Jiang Qing, took the original couplet that summed up the inheritance theory, father a hero, son a great fellow, father a reactionary, son a rotten egg, and rewrote it in line with Mao Zedong thought as, father a hero, son carries on, father a reactionary, son turns the tables. These slogans were written as matching pairs to be placed on either side of the courtyard at New Year's. Over each door there was a horizontal line for the lintel. This line qualified the statements on each side. Over the student's couplet, the line read, Jiban Rusi. What's the C? Rusi? I don't know. What the Ruki? I don't know. That's weird. I've never seen a C like that. Anyway, the way things are. Over Jiang Qing's couplet, the line read, Yingdang Rusi, or whatever that is, the way things ought to be. Before Dengism? Well, this is Liu Shaoqi. Liu Shaoqi was Deng's mentor, essentially. Like, Deng was there in the background, just kind of, he was just in Liu Shaoqi's camp, But this is before that. Yeah, this is the Cultural Revolution. Like, Deng took over after Li Shaoqi died, after the Cultural Revolution, after the Gang of Four was deposed, all of that. He took over. Yeah. And then he abolished the workers' right to strike. He smashed the Iron Rice Bowl. He got rid of free education and medical care in rural areas. Blah, 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 blah. He partnered with foreign capitalists to decrease workers' rights in the cities and made policies that would force people out of the rural areas into the cities so that they could work in the factories of the foreign capitalists for low wages and no rights. You know, that Deng Xiaoping, that one? Yeah, this is we're talking about earlier than that. This is all the kind of thing that Li Shaoqi wanted and Deng eventually carried out after taking power. And a whole bunch of people are going to be really angry for all the shit I just said about Deng Xiaoping, but I don't care, it's true. Sorry. Oh boy. Anyway, so many of these young people, after wandering in political limbo for a while, picked themselves up and joined the rebels. This was true of Liu Tao. She later drew a clear line of distinction between herself and her family and worked to support Mao Zedong's line. But in the summer of 1966, she was riding high as the offspring of a celebrity, and she had support from below and from above. Dong Stream 1. I mean, I feel like we kind of have already done. Go read Silas Choppers and Snake Spirits if you want that. The entire part of the book where Dong is in charge, I think that would just... the later part of the book. But in the summer of 1966, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the letter... the support from above came not only from her mother, but from other high cadres of the revisionist clique who visited the campus from time to time. Liu Shaoqi himself came more than once to check up on the work, but it was always late at night, and he wore a gauze face mask so that nobody could recognize him. Bo Yibo, chairman of the State Economic Commission and alternate member of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee, was more bold. He came in broad daylight on June 19th and July 3rd and spent a long time looking at the posters that covered the walls. In the course of one of these visits, this prestigious old cadre got into an argument with Kuai Dafu, who didn't know whom he was talking to. As the argument waxed out, Kuai called Bo a fat old man. "To be old is no crime," retorted Bo, "and as for being fat, that can hardly be an issue." He's right. At least he didn't call him a bald head, because then he'd get eaten by a bear. "Suppose I were to call you a capitalist roader because your name is Dafu, which means great wealth." Turning to the crowd that had gathered around them, Bo asked, "How many here think that Kuai Dafu is of the left?" All those who think so raised their hands. Only Kuai raised his hand. All the others hesitated. "You see," said Bo Yibo, "you are the only one who thinks you are a leftist." It's so petty. It's so petty. Why was... Okay, hold on. How much longer in this? Okay, this is like a longer... Okay. I'm trying to figure out how long, because we have not that much long. We're over time now, but I think we can finish this chapter. Why was Tsinghua so important? Why was it important enough to Li Shaoqi and Bo Yibo to require personal visits? Why did you send Wang Guangmei there in person? The answer seems to be, at first, that institutions of higher learning were important nodal points in a cultural revolution that was primarily concerned with the superstructure, a revolution that was in essence a contest over which class would control culture and ultimately power in China. And second, that among the universities in China, Tsinghua enjoyed a pivotal position as the central institution for the study and development of science and engineering. In the period of socialist construction, these studies took precedence over all others, and consequently the main single center of science and engineering also took precedence. The crucial importance of Tsinghua was illustrated by the fact that its president, Jiang Naxiang, was at the same time a minister of higher education. An additional factor, insofar as Liu Shaoqi was concerned, was the fact that his daughter Liu Tao was a student there. At that time, his other children were at the normal college middle school, where so many higher cadres sent their offspring that it was called the best school in Beijing. Wang Guangmei had created her peach orchard experience in the countryside as a guide to the whole nation in the socialist education movement. Now, with the help of Liu Tao, she would be able to recreate a Tsinghua experience as a guide to the whole nation in the Cultural Revolution. Once Wang Guangmei went to Tsinghua, of course, Liu Shaoqi's prestige was committed there. Tsinghua became a focal point of the struggle between the two headquarters in the Communist Party, and its importance in the overall battle over line and policy in China was sharply enhanced. In the course of counteracting Wang Guangmei's influence, Jiang Qing, Premier Zhou Enlai, and Vice Premier Xie Fuji all went to the campus at various times. This intervention from the very top was the basis for the students' belief that the revolution in China as a whole would stand or fall on what happened at their institution. There's a little bit of arrogance there, just a bit. Later, when factional struggle escalated, each faction thought that the proletarian headquarters at the Central Committee level, and therefore Mao Zedong himself, could not hold out without a victory for its side. Y'all. The first big break in the offensive launched by the work team against Kuai's rebels came on July 18th. On that day, all students confined to quarters were suddenly released. Yulin announced that the period of criticism was over, and that henceforth everyone would join in repudiating the original target of the mass movement, the capitalist roaders. Suddenly, almost as quickly as it had begun, the great campaign to pull out Kuai ceased. This happened because Mao Zedong had returned from the south and had sharply questioned what the work teams were doing. Hold on. Mao coming back from his trip to finding out what the fuck is going on at this university. Anyway, obligatory, sorry. Hey y'all, what the fuck? The fuck did you do now? So anyway, on July 27th, Jiang Qing went personally to the Beijing University campus and led a critical review of the work team's accomplishments, which lasted 4 days. By July 26th, Wang Guangmei, whose students said had a pipeline to heaven, i.e. access to information at the very top, was quite aware of the outcome at Beijing University and quickly took steps to fold her tents before they were packed up for her. On July 28th, the Beijing Party Committee ordered all work teams withdrawn, but at the same time promised the students that an important part of the leadership group of each team would stay on the campuses to receive criticism from the masses. Late in the afternoon of July 29th, Wang Guangmei suddenly showed up at the dining room north of the Quiet House and made an apologetic speech to the students eating there. Just define apologetic. There's 2 definitions of apologetic. One definition is I'm sorry, and the other definition is doing apologetics. And essentially defending herself. So which is it? It's funny that the word apologetic can often mean opposite things, depending on the context. Anyway. This was her first truly public appearance on the campus. Dropping her pseudonym Little Ho, she called herself Comrade Guangmei and said, "People have welcomed me here because I am linked to Shaoqi. This is understandable." Concerning the order for the work teams to withdraw, she claimed that she had not seen it and didn't know the details, but that she was fully in accord with it. "I've only been here a short time," she went on. "I've only been an ordinary member of the work team. Have we any achievements? Have we any shortcomings? I think we have some of both. Of course, I have my own opinions about this, but it is hard to speak out. Since the people are rising up in rebellion, of course we welcome it, but some people are raising all these problems to a much too high a level. Tone it down, guys." Never mind. If you want me to serve you, I can join in the daily chores. I would gladly work in the kitchen, sweep the floors, clean up the privies. She is not... She is, you see what she's doing here? She is, like, so not sincere, even remotely. Oh my god. It's so obvious. Since coming here, it is true, I've not been close to the masses. I haven't done well in living with, eating alongside, and studying with the people. Since I've been criticized for this, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to cook, sweep, and carry night soil. Then you may judge whether I'm a revolutionary or not by my actions. Y'all, what a load of crap. Oh my god. Thereupon, she reported for work in the kitchen and was assigned to sell food at the counter. Potatoes, to be exact. I like potatoes. I had fries yesterday. I had the, quote, average trans femme meal meme. Somebody posted a picture of a plate of fries with some ketchup and some pickle slices. And said it was the average trans femme meal. This is absolutely absurd. This is absolutely... It was so fucking delicious though when I made it. Oh my god. I did it. I put pickle slices on, I had the ketchup, I had the fries, I made myself, oh my god, it was so fucking good. God damn it. Anyway. So she sold the potatoes, but rebel students claim that even as a potato server, she was a rank opportunist. Giving extra portions to those whom she hoped to influence while assuming a posture of false humility before the student body as a whole. It does very much sound completely insincere when it sounds like she's going way over the top here. Like, y'all, it really does. Anyway, posters immediately went up against her. Expose Wang Guangmei's food-selling schemes. Wang Guangmei is spreading potatoes like an angel spreading flowers. Not at all mollified by the famous lady's sudden surrender, the student militants insisted on going into the issues and raising them to the level of principle. What Wang Guangmei and the work team had carried out, they said, was a bourgeois reactionary line. On the evening of July 29th, a mass meeting was held on campus. Representatives of the Beijing Municipal Party Committee and the Central Committee officially announced that the work team would withdraw. Wang Guangmei repeated the gist of her dining hall speech, and a preparatory Cultural Revolution Committee was selected to carry on the work the work team had so suddenly dropped. The selection of this committee, to which Tsinghua's official seals were turned over, thus putting it in power on the campus, was rigged by the retreating work team. Democratic forms were followed without the substance of democracy. What happened was that certain names of students and minor staff members were read off. If there was applause for them, they were confirmed as members of the committee. Since the work team had mobilized a large portion of its campus supporters, the loyalists, to come to the meeting, every name selected by the work team received some applause, and the new committee was quickly constituted. Yu Tao was chairwoman. Wang Renjing, a loyal work team supporter, and He Pengfei were vice chairman. Y'all. They're not even trying to hide it. Okay. Yulin then announced that the masses, through their elected committee, now held power in Tsinghua. In fact, said my student informants, we had a work team without the work team.